Welcome back to Inside the Game with CNHI Sports. I'm George Bremer of CNHI Sports Indiana, and each week we take you inside some of the biggest headlines with experts from the CNHI company around the country. It was a huge week for the Big Ten, opening the football season. Lots to get to, so let's not waste any time and go check in with Elton Hayes of CNHI Pennsylvania and Kevin Brockway of CNHI Sports Indiana. Now we check in with Elton Hayes of CNHI Sports Pennsylvania and Kevin Brockway of CNHI Sports Indiana, who were on either side of the game of the week in college football this week. IU upsetting number 8 Penn State at Memorial Stadium in overtime, a kind of a risky call by Tom Allen, and I'm sure whether you live in Pennsylvania right now or Indiana determines whether or not you think the 2-point conversion was good. But either way, IU is 1-0, first win over a top 10 team since 1987. Penn State is 0-1. Guys, where are these teams moving forward? I guess, Kevin, we'll start with you. IU, highest ranking since 1993. What's the attitude right now in Bloomington?
Yeah, I think that there is optimism with regards to how they performed, but also kind of a sense of calm and not getting too overconfident heading into Saturday against Rutgers, because the Scarlet Knights obviously are coming off their breakthrough game in terms of breaking a 21-game losing streak in conference play, beating Michigan State. So I think that there's a respect for Rutgers going into this week in terms of some of the players that I've talked to, and but certainly jubilation of finally getting through that breakthrough win and finishing in turns that could have gone so many different ways. And at a time it was looking very eerily similar to the Gator Bowl last year, where Indiana snatched a defeat from the jaws of victory, but this time around Indiana found the way to make the plays. And I think Mike Penix really, his athleticism, made a huge difference, and he struggled for much of that game, but made the throws and made the plays when he had to. And that, 2-point conversion, whether it hit the pylon or was an inch short of the pylon, depending on what view you had, will go down in Indiana lore as one of those great plays in football history.
No doubt about that. Elton, I'm sure the exact opposite feeling right now in Happy Valley, but they got a little more news after the game. Noah Cain now out. Their top 2 running backs not on the roster. What's the situation for the Nittany Lions?
Well, Penn State went from having one of the deepest running back rooms in the country to being very shallow. The 3 guys in line for rotation right now is a sophomore and Devin Ford, and 2 true freshmen, Keziah Holmes and Keybon Lee, all of which who played on Saturday. But, that was very surprising to see Coach Franklin come out early in that press conference and get that out there. These college football coach types are one to keep their cards close to their chest. So the fact that he put it out there kind of ends all speculation. We know we're going to see a heavy dose of Devin Ford, who had 20 carries for 69 yards, and the touchdown that we talked about for a very long time there in the fourth quarter. And you've got 2 true freshman running backs, both 4-star prospects, according to 24/7's recruiting rankings, who are going to step in and get a lot of playing time. One of the things I asked Coach Franklin heading into the season, was just about the depth and injuries. What's going to happen with playing 9 games consecutively without any time for rest? And he said the good thing about this year is the fact that we can play anybody without it really hitting against their eligibility. So we're going to see Penn State. That's going to work in Penn State's favor this year. But losing a guy like Noah Cain, who, after you lose a guy like Journey Brown, who's the 2019 leading rusher, Cotton Bowl offensive MVP, to turn around and lose a guy like Noah Cain, who had the starting job for 1 game last year before he got hurt, it's just, we thought things couldn't have gotten worse for Penn State after that loss to Indiana, and we saw that they can. And Penn State's going to really have to have a don't let the same game beat you twice mentality as number 3 Ohio State comes to town 7:30 p.m. on Saturday.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting primetime matchup. I'm sure Nittany Lions will be fired up for that. They're not the only team in the conference dealing with some unexpected personnel news this week. I don't know if Wisconsin's confirmed it yet. I don't know if they're even allowed to, but certainly plenty of reports out there that their freshman quarterback, Graham Mertz, a superstar on Friday night, 20 of 21 in his debut, has a positive test for the COVID virus. He is apparently going to be out for 3 weeks. What impact does this have on Wisconsin specifically, but on the Big Ten West race in broader terms?
It's wide open right now. Wisconsin, after that win, vaulted to number 9 in the AP poll. You had a guy like Mertz who comes in. Wisconsin's known for its bruising rushing attack, and now you have a redshirt freshman quarterback who's throwing the football all over the place. That number 9 ranking is undoubtedly attributed to his abilities, but for him for them, I'm not sure if they have confirmed the second test. I believe I did read earlier that they have, which means he'll be out for 21 weeks. I've also read that the third string quarterback might have been exposed as well. So if that's the case, then, remember Graham Mertz is playing in place of Jack Cohn, the incumbent starter from last season. So Wisconsin could be trotting a fourth string quarterback out there for the next 3 games.
Yeah, probably a walk-on. And to me, when you look at the Big Ten West, it's kind of interesting. Minnesota, I thought, was fairly disappointing, particularly on the defensive side of the ball in that game. And Tanner Morgan certainly wasn't great. He had a pass intercepted, return for a touchdown, a pick 6 on a hit by a defensive lineman. All of a sudden, teams like Northwestern looked really strong under Peyton Ramsey. Purdue, even without Rondale Moore, and he could be out a couple of weeks, and they've been really mum about his situation in terms of what he has or what he's dealing with. But David Bell scores 3 touchdowns. You've got some dark horse teams there in the West that are going to have, even Nebraska, even though they lost to Ohio State, they showed a little bit of an improvement there, and they got Wisconsin next at the right time. So it's going to open up the door for, maybe some teams to kind of sneak in there, and maybe for a surprise team in the West to emerge.
Maybe a team that surprised some people in week 1. Probably the entire time that Jim Harbaugh's been at Michigan, one of the big knocks has been he hasn't gotten consistent play from that quarterback position. Joe Milton comes out, has a really impressive debut. Where do you guys stand on him and the Wolverines?
I mean, if I'm a Michigan fan, I'm feeling pretty optimistic right now. The guy went into number 21 Minnesota. I saw that it was a 28-degree evening there in Minneapolis, and just was responsible with the football, looked comfortable in there, and he's just built. I mean, the guy's 6'6", 230 pounds. He looks the real deal. So, like you say, George, one of the knocks against Harbaugh is, for all of his recruiting prowess, he's never really brought in a quarterback who's really, fulfilled all of, I guess, the potential. And it looks like it's early, but it looks like Joe Milton might be that guy. And if that's the case, then the Wolverines, they're a contender in the Big Ten East.
Yeah, and don't underestimate Josh Gattis, second year as offensive coordinator too. I think that helps with the overall continuity of the offense. Even though Milton's a new quarterback, you do have an offense that is, obviously got some cohesion to it. In that, you're bringing back the same play caller a second year in a row, and certainly Nico Collins is a pretty dynamic receiver as well. They've got some guys, they've got some weapon there. And it'll just be interesting to see over the course of the season, how the defense holds up and can they handle, the likes of Ohio State and slow them down.
Shift gears a little bit here before we let you go to basketball. Another breaking story. Elton's been a busy guy out there with Penn State coach Pat Chambers being let go. A situation that started in July, I believe. The university had an investigation, and apparently the results were not what they wanted. Where does that leave the Nittany Lions as the basketball season approaches here?
Jim Ferry's the interim head coach for the foreseeable future. The timing couldn't have been worse if you're a Penn State basketball player with the season starting here in a month. Anyone you want's already at his school, and the person who's interested is interested for a reason. So Sandy Barber said that the school is going to conduct a cast a wide net in its searching committee. Jim Ferry could be one of the guys who ends up with the job. He's coached at 4 different programs, most recently at Duquesne, where he was there for 5 seasons. He's a guy who Pat Chambers brought on staff in 2017. So it keeps it in-house. It kind of keeps some of the continuity, but it's going to be interesting to see where Penn State goes with this hire. Was successful last year, 21-10 overall. Was poised to play in its first tournament since the 2011 season. Kind of got a taste of that basketball success. So will Penn State kind of pony up the money and get someone who can maybe keep them in in contention, or will it choose to go a different route? So we'll see what happens, but it'll be very, very interesting to follow.
I mean, Kevin, I know you've got a lot of contacts nationwide. We saw Orlando kind of fall through as a bubble site. Is there any concern about college basketball getting started? Or do they feel like they've got that pretty well under control?
I think they do have it under control, but it's going to be particularly hard for some of the mid-majors, some of the smaller schools to fill their schedules at this point. I think that's kind of the big issue. The bigger schools right now are with their conference tie-ins are, I know that Indiana is fairly close. Looks like they're going to still play Butler in the Crossroads Classic. Looks like they're still going to play their ACC Big Ten Challenge game. There have been some rumblings with Louisville about that possibly being the opponent to keep them close by and cut down on travel. North Carolina being the site of the Maui Invitational this year too. They got 3 games there, starting with Providence, and they're in the bracket with Texas and Davidson. So they've got some things laid out non-conference-wise. It's certainly going to be a pretty challenging schedule for a school like Indiana. But I think it's right now. I think things are looking for a go for November 25th. I think the big problem is when you have so many different conferences, their availability to testing some of the smaller conferences. That's an issue as well, and that's something that'll be worth monitoring, within the next couple of weeks.
No doubt about it. Quite the eventful first week for the Big Ten. I'm sure you guys are looking forward to week 2. We'll check back with you again in another week. Thanks again to Kevin and Elton for joining us. You can follow Kevin and his IU coverage at Kevin Brockway G1. You can follow Elton and the Penn State Nittany Lions at EHDC12. Now let's shift gears a little bit, go to the NFL, and check in for our weekly spot with Bill Burt of CNHI Sports Boston. All right, let's shift gears now and go to the pro game. We'll check in with Bill Burt from CNHI Sports Boston. And Bill, we saw a huge game this week between the Steelers and the Titans. Probably should have gone to overtime. I'm sure Tennessee's going to be kicking themselves over that for a little while. We've got another one coming up this week between Pittsburgh and Baltimore. What's your sense? I wrote the column this week. You can read it in your CNHI papers. I thought there are 4 teams at the top of the AFC right now: the Steelers, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Titans. What's your sense right now as far as Super Bowl contenders in the AFC go?
Well, those are the 4, and I would probably say right now I would go with Kansas City again. I've been riding that train. They haven't looked great per se, but they're the team in this COVID. Again, coaching and quarterbacks. Look at all 4 teams. And I will say Tennessee, you could argue, maybe among the quarterbacks is 4th, but these are teams that know how to get it done. If Brady stayed with the Patriots, I believe with the Patriots would be in there too, based on just having everything in place. Now the Patriots have fallen apart. We'll probably get into that, but I'm Kansas City. The Ravens are like I don't really know about the Ravens. Tennessee is tough, but they've had 2. Could have won last week in a crazy comeback, had a crazy comeback the week before. If they're going to play with fire, that's going to cost them. You can't play that way and live as we saw out in Seattle. So if you ask me, I think this is Kansas City's Super Bowl to lose. I think they're the best team, but there's 2 to 3 teams right there knocking on the door AFC.
When you look at the game Sunday for the Chiefs, obviously it was a snow game. There was a lot of weird kind of circumstances. But how scared should the rest of the league be that the Chiefs defense woke up and played a big role in that game, scored some points, they got points on special teams? If they're going to do that on a weekly basis, how tough are they?
Well, I saw them the week before against the Patriots. No, that's another team because I gave them no respect coming into Foxborough. And after the game, they made the Patriots look bad on both sides of the ball. And they almost the Patriots had a chance to win that game, which they had no right doing. But I like the way their defense plays. I'm just not sure. I'm not ready. Well, no, they looked good. And again, Kansas City is, I think, going through the Super Bowl sort of honeymoon, and they just have to get through the next 2 or 3 weeks. Then it's basically watching these other teams. Watch the Steelers and the Ravens. Which one knocks the bleep out of the other? And remember, they play each other twice. I don't think that division, the Chargers and the Raiders, I just don't think that's the division that's really going to really test them. So they're sort of maybe playing the Patriot route. Just get through the season, get better in October, November, and really December. But the Steelers are the team. I haven't really given them their due. They're undefeated. They dominated that game, and they just sort of let them in. They played a little, played the running game, tried to run the clock out, and that's never easy to do. Got to give the Titans credit because, they were down 3 touchdowns and made a game of it and almost came back and won, which shows you that they can win. We look at them as a team that's just going to run the football and beat the daylights out of you and control the clock. That's how they win. Well, they've showed a couple weeks in a row they can win other ways. That makes them a little interesting. So I'm still sticking with Kansas City. I was impressed what they did. I was impressed that they did it to a team that's got a little fire under their butts there in Denver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. I agree with you. I think Kansas City's still team to beat. It's going to be interesting to watch kind of those 4 teams and how that plays out. Looking at the NFC side of things, I see fewer contenders there. I've got only 3 teams at the top with Tampa Bay right now. I think maybe the hottest team in the league right now, either conference, and then Seattle and Green Bay. And I put Green Bay in there, but that loss to Tampa a couple weeks ago was a pretty dominant performance by the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I will say this. Yes, it was. And we thought it was a big game for Aaron Rodgers to go against Tom Brady, and he played one of his worst games of his career. But so I think you're right. What you didn't include Arizona. Arizona's not there yet. They got to go through some growing pains. I'm not a believer in their coach yet. The quarterback, Kyler Murray, he's interesting. He's a guy we're not really talking about, but he's a guy like next year, he could be one of those quarterbacks pushing to be one of the best in the league. I'm not sold on him yet, but his speed and quickness, the way he can turn a 10-yard sack into a 20-yard gain like I've never seen before. I agree. Seattle, again, we were right on Seattle. Seattle just plays with fire just too much. Their defense, in my opinion, isn't going to work in January. You can't give up 30-plus points every single game and live on your quarterback, who's probably right now the MVP of the league. So I agree with you. It's like a 1A and a B in the NFC with all 3 of those teams.
And the NFC West is a really interesting division. We saw that game between Arizona and Seattle. The Rams have played well at times. The 49ers are fighting through these injuries. If they get healthy, maybe they're another team that could be in the picture.
So, okay, I saw them. That was, and I wrote about it on Monday. I wrote a lot of things about the Patriots' loss to San Francisco. And basically the theme was blow it up, Bill. It's this team could probably fight its way to maybe getting a 7th playoff spot, but right now I'd say no. But back to San Francisco, that was dominant. I mean, I don't know. I want to give some credit to them. It was one of the worst games I've seen a Patriots team play in 20 years. That's a lot of football, and they got beat up. They were never in the game. So the score, 33-6, I don't even know if it was that close because they were never in the game. They were out hustled. They were out tackled. Little wide receivers, little running backs, 3rd and 4th string running backs treated this Patriots defense and shredded them. And I'm telling you, they were looking for contact with the Patriots secondary, and they won. And they won the contact battles too. So I'm very concerned about the Patriots. Separate issue. San Francisco, not yet. And no, they're a legit playoff team. They could get to an NFC championship game, but I just don't see them having the complete depth on both sides of the ball that those two teams have.
Looking at New England, obviously it's a quarterback-driven league. They drive all the headlines. Cam Newton struggling there, got benched during the game. How much concern is there right now over his play and where he is with this team?
You mean you haven't been able to hear the yelling? Out here. Yeah, it's almost ready. So I wrote this column on Monday saying after the game Sunday night that it's time to blow this up. And, the Patriots have a couple of pieces, Gilmore, Joe Tooney on the offensive line. So they have pieces. So not to avoid your question, but my point is blow it up. If the quarterback was playing 30% better than he is, not even playing great, but just playing 30% better, I'd say let's go for this. Let's go for that 7th playoff spot. And Belichick, coach your way to an AFC championship, steal a game or two. Not after that game on Sunday. And so I would say, and I'm going to give Cam Newton credit because I thought his attitude would be worse if he was ever pulled. He's accepted blame. He said he's the reason, and he's not the reason. He's not. Yeah, he is the reason. They have a lot of problems. But if the quarterback play was better, I think this team would be in a much better position. But I'm very concerned. And if you ask me, 5-11 and punt, and within 2 years try to win a Super Bowl again. And look, that's hard to say here in New England. We're used to literally, it's been 20 years, 19 years, and these fans are tough here. We're, I don't know, just very spoiled. And I don't know if they're willing to wait, but I'm going to tell you what, they're going to have to.
It's definitely a unique set of circumstances up there, not seen for a couple decades. Can't let you go without talking about another guy who you have some firsthand knowledge of, who's made headlines this week, Antonio Brown joining the Buccaneers. How do you see this playing out in Tampa Bay?
It's going to play out well. And, you know, we got writers here in New England that are, you know, how could Brady do that? He's done committed all these crimes against women. Well, nobody was saying that, you know, a year ago. This is, look at it, I'll say it again. This is the NFL is like a sausage. It tastes really good. We don't want to know what's in it. And that's Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown is desperate. So this is it. Now, I think we've said it. This is his last chance. This is his last chance. And he is the best. Him and Brady, just the one game they played, they were inches away from 4 touchdowns. He gets open, his footwork, his hands. In my opinion, he's the best wide receiver in the game because he's a possession guy, and he's a deep guy, and he's a comeback guy. So I think it's going to work. They don't need him per se. So I have more issues. Are the other Tampa Bay wide receivers? Is Godwin going to be okay with it? Is Evans going to be okay with it? If they are, watch out. You can't stop this offense because this and look, they got a good defense too. They pass rush. They have a good. They 2 corners are good. This is a very good team, and it's going to be interesting. You know, I joked about it at the beginning of the year. It could be a Patriots-Bucs Super Bowl. Like the Patriots aren't in it, but I think the Bucs are going to be there.
They're definitely heading in the right direction. Could be the first team ever to host the Super Bowl. Of course, it could come in a year when there are no fans there or limited fans. So definitely going to be something interesting to watch going forward. Bill, thanks for your time. We'll check back with you next week.
Best to you and Heather. Take care.
Thanks again to Bill Burt. You can follow him and his New England Patriots coverage at Burt Talks Sports. You can follow me in the Indianapolis Colts at GM Bremer. Now let's get a national picture, and we'll go check in with Clay Horning of CNHI Sports Oklahoma. All right, not even an ice storm in his home state can slow down our next guest. So we welcome in Clay Horning of CNHI Sports Oklahoma. And Clay, I know some people will be watching this. The World Series will be over by the time that they see it. But an interesting year this year with Clayton Kershaw getting a big win in Game 5 for the Dodgers and kind of maybe putting to rest all that kind of albatross he's carried around his neck about not being able to be a big game pitcher.
Well, that's true. I have we talked a little bit about this before we got started. My view is nuanced on this because to me, to be that guy, you've got to be sort of what Josh Beckett was with the Marlins in that Game 7. And what I, in my head, I think it was the 81 World Series, what Steve Carlton did. I remember they brought in Tug McGraw to save it, and I thought, and all he did was load the bases, but then he got out of it. But at any rate, he's going to – there is such a rush to relieve him of this can't be a great postseason pitcher that I think if the Dodgers win as we're speaking tonight, or if they don't win tonight, if they win at all, I think that he could be the MVP of the series. But if he is, it'll be like Paul Newman winning an Oscar for The Color of Money. It's not his best stuff. He hasn't been terrific He hasn't. I don't think he's. I don't know that he's pitched in the 7th inning. He didn't the other night. So it's just doesn't. His historically, he is a great pitcher. Maybe the best of his generation. I think Verlander is right there also. I don't know if he overlapped with Roy Halladay, but boy, could Roy Halladay pitch. But at any rate, he's going to get the monkey off his back, I think. But it's still not that classic pitching. It doesn't have to be on short rest. Doesn't have to be a complete game. But, I mean, come on, 7 or 8 innings. I mean, this is what starting pitching used to be. So it's hard for me to hand it all to him, should he, even if he's World Series MVP. It's very nuanced. Anyway.
I know where you're coming from. I mean, you think back to like Randy Johnson and Kurt Schilling with the Diamondbacks basically carrying that team through that series with the Yankees, or Josh Beckett, as you mentioned, hauling a couple teams through there. Even Jack Morris with the Tigers and the Twins, and some things that he did
innings. I was a Braves fan. That was like the worst night of my life when Jack Morris went the distance. And I'm trying to think. Again, I hate the argument of, well, how many titles did this person win? Because for me, John Elway didn't need his 2 Super Bowls at the end of his career to be judged the best quarterback I'd ever seen. But so I don't like it's not the championship doesn't validate, but your performance in the championship does, and he's still not going to be that classic guy. I don't know. It's just the way it is.
I wonder if maybe that era is done. I mean, you look at the way bullpens are used now, and the Rays, obviously, with the openers, and even when they don't specifically say they're going to have a bullpen kind of a game, it's not uncommon to see the bullpen coming in the 6th inning across the league. Do you think maybe the days of the dominant starter are dying?
Well, they definitely are. I think that we will get – I have this nostalgia for the 4-man staff even, pitch on 3 days rest all through the regular season. But I think that's because we yearn for a 20-game winner. We yearn to – not that, pitcher wins don't mean anything, but we yearn to be able to relate to somebody the way we connected to the game when we originally connected to the game. So, but yes, that era is over. I think there will be workhorse starters that, that can do it. That will, there always will be a team that struggles to put together a good bullpen that will rely on starting pitching a little more. But something is definitely lost. And I think about, we talked about when will the pendulum swing, or when will offenses respond to the way defenses are now, setting up shifts and 4 guys in the outfield, whatever. I want to believe that everything that's old could be new again. I don't know if that will happen. I've even I places like Fangraphs and just deep dive baseball sites. You can find a story or two on could the 4-man staff still work, and I've seen a story or two that it could. And pitchers don't seem any less delicate now that they're pitching every 5 days. I mean, they seem to need Tommy John surgery just as often. So I don't know that, and back when the Braves had a 4-man staff and it was Glavine, Smoltz, Avery, and whoever they could, Charlie Leibrandt for a while, they were always struggling to find the 4th guy. Leo Mazzoni, the pitching coach, was sort of famous for 2 bullpen sessions between starts. He thought more work made them more durable. And I guess Avery didn't have the long career, but Smoltz, Glavine, and Maddox and Avery didn't overlap much, but Smoltz, Glavine, and Maddox really did have those long careers. And I'll bet you they were starting between 36 and 40 games a year, which nobody does anymore. So, hate to see it go. And in fact, and as you asked that question, I had this thought, and I'm pleased I just now remembered it. When Dave Roberts went to take Kershaw out of Game 5 in the 6th inning after getting 2 outs on 2 pitches, he was booed by Dodger fans. So, and it was, given Kershaw's history, it was absolutely the right move, and yet the fans in the stadium are sort of more loyal to the idea of him succeeding on the postseason stage in the fashion that we're talking about. They wanted him to finish that inning. How could you not? And if he would have gotten the third out on 2 or 3 pitches, they would have been clamoring for him to come out the 7th. And he didn't throw 90 pitches, I don't think. So, yeah, it's interesting. Fans still relate to the game in the ways that they do, even though it might not be best for their team.
In that situation, too, I know after the game, Robert said some of the players were kind of lobbying him to keep Kershaw in the game, too. So there's still some of that attitude in the dugout as well.
Yeah, sentimentally, we want to see it the way we want to see it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Shifting gears to kind of legacy of a different sort, a pretty big Sunday and Monday for the Oklahoma alums in the NFL this week.
Well, what Baker and Kyler did is just Baker Mayfield he was over 5 to begin the game, finished his game 22 of 28. He completes 21 of his last 22 passes. The one he did not complete was a spike to stop the clock. How about that? And he was looking like he was starting in his 3rd season after creating such a splash in his rookie season. He was beginning to look like, he could be a good game manager, I guess, for the next 10 years. So it's just, who saw that coming? And he, interestingly, Zach Peters, right? Is that right? Bengals head coach Zach Peters. Do I have his name right? Because he's a Norman High grad.
Zach Taylor. Yeah.
And his younger brother, Press, were both quarterbacks at Norman High School, where I covered him a little way back when. So he did it not against a great team. The Bengals, I believe, are 1-5 now, but nonetheless, he did it amazingly. He had 3 touchdown passes in the 4th quarter. And then Kyler Murray goes out and beats the only undefeated team, I think, still in the league at the time he did it. So just incredible. And also, but I can't remember the name of that linebacker that intercepted the pass in overtime that gave them the chance. But God, what a play. I mean, it wasn't all Kyler. He had to get the ball back in the last 2 minutes of overtime. But that was just insane. But to do it in the fashion Baker did, and for Kyler to do it against the opponent he did it against, it's just amazing. It's the best day ever for Sooners in the NFL, and it led me down a rabbit hole of looking for hopefully like a tandem game of Sooners in the past. The best I could come up with. This is probably just for Oklahoma listeners, perhaps. But Billy Brooks, who caught about 8 passes as a Sooner, but may have still been an All-American because that's what you did during the Barry Switzer Wishbone days, as a Cincinnati Bengal, had a game in which he caught 7 balls for 198 yards on the same day that Greg Pruitt carried 19 times for 108 for the Cleveland Browns. However, Brooks lost, and so did Pruitt. So anyway, can't have it all. And it's funny, I was even looking up Adrian Peterson's biggest games, but on those days of the other Oklahoma offensive players in the NFL were basically receivers that Jason White threw to on the way to his Heisman Trophy, Mark Bradley, some of the names. But anyway, look, nobody had a huge day on the day Adrian ran for 296. So anyway, we just never seen a day like that, but it was cool to look back on some Sooner history. And as I was telling you,
if the Cowboys can get a quarterback healthy, C.D. Lamb might be in there one of the days. You might have a Sunday even bigger this year.
I mean, if you had to say, will C.D. Lamb be a Hall of Famer or not be a Hall of Famer? It's like, how could you? It's hard for me to say he won't be if they can have a quarterback. He's just so good. So good. And I guess I do want to mention this, that everybody should look up Joe Washington from September 8th. No. Where am I with it? From September 18th of 1978. Frank Gifford calling the game, Don Meredith offering color, and Howard Cosell doing whatever Howard Cosell was doing in the Monday Night Football booth. And Joe Washington, former Sooner, throws a touchdown pass in the 4th quarter, catches a touchdown pass in the 4th quarter, and returns a kickoff 90 yards for a touchdown, all in the fourth quarter. Probably the greatest Monday Night Football performance ever by a former Sooner. And he ran for about 50 yards too, but he did other things that night in a rainstorm. So look, it's on YouTube. It's all right there. You can look it up.
I may do that. That sounds like a really pretty. I can think of anybody as a fourth quarter on Monday night or otherwise, quite like that. That's a pretty versatile performance there by Joe Washington.
It was insane.
He'd just been traded for Lydell Mitchell, who had been the Colt running back for some time. And I can't remember who his quarterback was, but it was against New England. Steve Grogan was on the other side. Who knew? Who went to Kansas State? Who knew a Kansas State quarterback could do anything coming out of Manhattan in the 1970s? Although he and Lynn Dickey, former Green Bay quarterback, also Kansas State. Oh, history is great. Love it.
No doubt about it. Well, thanks a lot for your time, Clay. We'll try to let you get back safely and warm as you can be out there. I know dealing with a little weather out there in Oklahoma. Thanks a lot. We'll get back with you again next week. Thanks again to Clay. You can follow our national columnist at Clay Horning. Thanks again to all of you for joining us every week. We take you inside the game. We'll see you again next week.